What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell. In this episode, we're going to discuss some of the more tough upcoming decisions that the Ravens are going to be having with some of their key veteran players, and whether or not they might have to make some tough decisions on not just big time contributors on the field, but also some fan favorites off the field. So, let's get into it. But before we do, take a second, give us a subscribe, click the notification bell. We will keep you up to date on all your Ravens news. But Jimbo, who's the first player that you look at and go, man, they might have to make a tough call on this guy?
Yeah, and just really quickly, Glenn, the other thing I just want to add is that obviously Lamar Jackson's contract will inevitably, affect all of this. But right now, we're going to have this conversation under the assumption that the Ravens have the ability to make a decision. Like, it's not a foregone conclusion that these players will be gone that are on this list because of Lamar's deal. Because honestly, you could say that about tons of players, all the players certainly on this list. But we're going to assume that the Ravens have the ability to retain if they want to. But the first one, of course, you talk about fan favorites. My favorite, Gus Edwards. Gus has a cap hit. Is it 4.5?
5.6.
5.6. Okay, $5.6 million cap hit. Imagine if it was $5.6, not $5.6 million. It is worth a cup of coffee. So he's got a $5.6 million cap hit this upcoming season. And if I'm also not mistaken, this is the last year of his deal.
You got it.
So, a couple things to consider here. JK is also, he just finished his third year.
Mm-hmm.
And he, so he's going to be looking for an extension. That was year one was the rookie year, and he averaged 6 a carry, and then he got injured, and then this was year 3. So, he's going to be looking for a deal, and I think the Ravens will want to be talking to him about it, is my guess. So, all that being said, Glenn, the options I think with Gus Edwards are, at least the most favorable option is really to extend him, find a way to lower that cap hit, and keep these two guys together. Like, would you be opposed to that at all and just outright getting rid of him? And I guess my question is, if we get rid of him, what are the savings?
Yeah, I mean, I think having a two-headed monster for a Ravens team led by Greg Roman was not a luxury at all. It was a necessity. But I wonder if the new OC, I think the Ravens are always going to have their run-first identity. So I think it's important to have a strong backfield. And I think the Ravens ideally would like to do just like you said. They give an extension to Gus Edwards. They keep him around. They keep that two-headed monster. But I also recognize that they could save $4.38 million if they can't come to a long-term agreement. If they cut Gus Edwards, they can save 4.3, but they'll also incur $1.2 million in dead money. So in reality, what's that? For $3.1 million is really what they'd be creating in cap space wise. And I don't know. I look at $3.1 million. I think Gus Edwards is more than worth $3.1 million. Also allows you to kind of keep J.K. Dobbins a little more fresh and make sure he's available when it matters most at the end of the season and not gas him out in the early parts. So I'm hopeful that even if they can't come to a long-term deal, that at the very least, man, let him play under that deal. I think he's worth it. And as long as they don't have to play Lamar under the exclusive, then I think they can make it happen.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll add here is really forget the position. I think at the end of the day, the Ravens on offense need playmakers because we don't really have playmakers at wide receiver. And Gus Edwards is simply a playmaker, right? So like, the value in that he can make plays and impactful plays is there. So I hope that they get a deal done and we're able to keep these guys together. But I agree with you. I mean, if it ends up being that they have the ability to pay him on that price, I won't see that as as a case of overpaying somebody.
But do you think giving that much money, just look at follow the numbers. You look at the franchise tag values that just got released, by far the lowest outside of kicker is running back. So do you think it's for a team who's looking for kind of a little bit of a new identity, do you think it's wise to give that much money? And I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate to your running back.
Right. Well, no, so the only reason, if I was a new OC coming in and I look at the offensive roster, obviously you have Lamar Jackson and you have JK and you have good offensive line, and you have Mark Andrews. But outside of that, who are my impactful players? Mm-hmm. Who are they really? You're slim pickings. I think that after Lamar, JK, and Mark Andrews, like excluding the offensive line because they're in
not
every
playmakers.
Play. Right. At the end of the day, I think it's Gus. I don't think it's any of the wide receivers.
Likely.
Maybe, but he doesn't have the resume that Gus Edwards does.
No.
So I get it.
Rashad Bateman when he's healthy.
I get it for sure. There's definitely concern there, but I think ultimately my case would be if you're smart, then you got to keep as many playmakers as you can.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to next guy here. And this is a guy who I think a lot of us may have assumed would already be gone to this point, but certainly glad he stuck around this past year. Chuck Clark saw the Ravens draft Kyle Hamilton to start their draft last year, and he almost forced his way out before kind of getting talked off the ledge and brought back into the room. But this year, Jimbo, $6.2 million cap hit. Now here's the bummer about it: if they cut him before June 1. They're only getting $3.4 million in cap relief, and they incur $2.7 in dead money.
Mm-hmm.
So my only thing is, can they just cut? You can cut them, but you're gonna incur nearly as much dead money as you will in cap relief.
Yeah, I think the only decision to be the only outcomes with Chuck Clark are keep him or trade him. If you need to offload the salary, then you do it within the confines of a trade. If the Ravens are put in that kind of a bind.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I think that's the only, and it would suck because you could be in a situation where, depending on the other dominoes that fall from a salary cap perspective, you could be in a situation where you're like, well, man, we really have to do this, and you might not get as much value as you regularly would because you're kind of stuck. Doing something like that because you've already got so much money dedicated to the secondary and certainly draft equity and things like that. So, I
don't know the rules on trading, Jimbo. I don't know what the Ravens would have to
eat and what the other team would take. And, my understanding is that really 95% of it is really within the negotiation.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like you simply negotiate that, right? Like, within season and stuff like that, obviously it gets more rigid, but in the off season, you negotiate as much of that as you can. And I think obviously a big part of the negotiation would be, you're taking the salary along with him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder what the market would be for a guy like Chuck Clark, or if teams would just say, you're going to have to cut him eventually, and then we'll talk to him. That could make it a tough call.
True. That's true. But look, at the end of the day, so I have the numbers in front of me as well. It's what $1.2 million they would get in savings.
If that, would they even get that?
So it's 3.4 minus 1 minus 2.7.
Yeah, that's 0.7. Right?
Oh, geez. Yeah.
That's
right.
Not even worth it. I think they should try and find a way to keep him, because what it does also is allows Kyle Hamilton to play in that role that he was so successful in, that kind of Swiss Army, that role they put him in. It really kind of awakened the true potential of the defense, along with the Roquan Smith addition. I want to see what it looks like if we can try and keep Chuck Clark around for at least one more season. But again, it all could come down to what happens with number 8. But I think he's valuable enough. He also wore the green dot all last year. Now I think Roquan will take over that spot. But if he's here, who knows? And he was also second on our team in tackles behind Roquan.
Yeah. So you're right. Chuck has a lot of value, not only from his performance, but also as a leader. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. But my prediction is he ends up getting traded.
All right. I'm going to say he stays.
All right. I like it.
All right. Next one. We're going to go to Kevin Zeitler, Jimbo. Kevin
Zeitler. This is a conundrum for me.
It's a tough one. He's got a $9.4 million cap hit in this upcoming season. The Ravens can save 6.5 if they cut him before June 1 and only incur 2.9 in dead cap. So they get about 3.6 in total relief from the cap. what do you think? What's your thoughts on Zeitler's value to this offense?
Yeah, I thought it was funny. His wife had to let everyone know that he hasn't talked about retirement today on Twitter. Man, I want Zeitler here. I think you got to extend him. You extend him and you find a way to lower that cap hit.
Yeah.
Because if he's not thinking about retirement and he's loving playing, he's performing at a high level. I mean, he is Baltimore through and through, and he's a cog there that I think we really need. I think if the Ravens, one thing they cannot afford to do is have to retool again at the offensive line. Like, let's keep that thing going as much as we can. Obviously, we're probably going to lose Ben Powers to the highest bidder, but I think Zeitler, the best option and the best decision for the Ravens is to extend him and lower the cap hit.
I think that's a good point, Jimbo. I do wonder if they can't come to some sort of an extension or agreement with Zeitler, if they decide to cut Zeitler and re-sign Ben Powers, if they feel like that's a better cap number, that'd be the only thing. But I'm like you. I don't want to see them lose both their guards.
Yeah, that would be brutal.
That'd be tough. And I think Kevin brings a lot more than just Pro Bowl level play. I think the leadership he brings to the team is certainly valuable as well. So yeah, I hope they find a way to give him an extension. I doubt he plays under this current deal though, Jimbo. Yeah. I think it's either they extend him or they may have to move on.
Yeah, and based off of his first deal, which was epic from a value perspective for the Baltimore Ravens, and every year just seemed to get better and better. Dude just loves the ball. Like he just, and so I don't think he's going to be super difficult to get a deal done with. Not that the Ravens are going to try to pull the wool over his eyes or anything like that, but I just think he likes the security, wants to get a deal done, and I don't think he wants to move around if he doesn't have to. So I think they get a deal done.
Nice. Yeah, I'll be rooting for you to be correct there. Now, Michael Pierce is a guy we only saw very briefly this past season, but certainly you can tell the impact that he was making on the field. He's still a hell of a player. He does carry a $5.9 million cap hit this season. My only question is it possible to move off of this guy?
Well, you would post June 1st, you would save $3 million.
So you got to do it post. So that's not something you see a terrible, like you don't see the Ravens do that a lot.
That's
typically
true.
When they're going to cut
they
a
want to give their guys a shot.
Yeah. So if they do it before, you mentioned it would benefit them in no way. It only makes sense for them if they do it after June 1. And I'm not saying the Ravens are all high and mighty and they're not going to do it, but I think if Michael Pierce wants to play, don't you think when they could be on the precipice, they could lose Calais Campbell, who we may have to take a second and talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you don't want to completely deplete the interior of your defensive line and have to start from scratch. And if I look at Michael Pierce, $5.9 million, I think if he's healthy, he can earn that $5.9 million hit.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. And the one thing, so I guess it really comes down to this. Let me ask you this question, because the Ravens could say, like, post June 1st, they could cut him to, maybe this wouldn't make too much sense either, because you might as well just then negotiate the deal instead of cutting him and kind of going through the whole process there. I was thinking originally maybe they cut him and see what he can go get and say, look, come back and talk to us. But because do you think he could get 5.9 on the open market?
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, you got Broderick, you got Metabike, it's
got Jones.
Yeah,
but I do want Mike here, dude, because like you're right. I mean, he's injury prone, but man, he's an impactful football player. He'll always be tempting. You know what I mean? It'll always be difficult not to keep him around because he's such an impactful player.
Yeah, and such a favorite in the locker room amongst his teammates. He would be. I mean, he just elevates the guys around him, certainly the guys behind him. His ability to eat up two blockers, I think, would make Roquan's job a lot easier. But he might be a luxury, Jimbo.
Ray Lewis had Tony Saragusa, Sam Adams, and the list,
Elodie
Nada. Like, the list goes on and on, right?
Kelly Gregg, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good point you bring up as well.
I just worry that if you got Arthur Jones, you got Broderick Washington, you got likely
Arthur Jones.
I mean, Arthur Jones.
Okay. Oh, now he's taking us way back.
He used to
Glenn.
be here. He used to be here. Travis Jones. You got a lot of young guys that I think it's time for them to, and they played well. So I think it might be time to move on from Michael, but I'll hope I'm wrong. This is another name I think is interesting here, Jimbo. I got to get your thoughts because he's one of your favorite players, a guy that you've certainly been a fan of since he's been here. Devin Duvernay has a $4.5 million cap hit in his final year of his contract. They can save 4.3 of that by cutting him and only incur 200,000 in dead cap space. So save $4 million by cutting Devin Duvernay. And the team admitted, Jimbo, that they need to revamp their wide receiver room, that they need to add talent to that room. Well, is there still room to pay Devin Duvernay $4.5 million?
Man, well, this is interesting because I think that if there's one area if there's one player that will be impacted by the new offensive coordinator outside of like Lamar Jackson, I also think of like J.K. Dobbins, man, because Devin Duvernay is high on that list as well because we've been waiting for him to be, at least I have, waiting for him to be like unlocked. And I know there's a whole army of people behind me, right, that have seen what he's able to do with the ball in his hands and what, a Deebo Samuels, once again, I'm not saying he's Deebo, but there are similarities there. So does the new OC value his skill set? Because right now you're paying him $4 and change really just to return kicks and punts because he's really not too impactful on the offense. He's a gadget guy.
But will that change with the new OC?
That's what I'm saying. That will be, that will be interesting to see how that person feels about Devin, his skill set, what he believes he can get out of him.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be an interesting one, man. That's a lot of savings.
Because I think where the kickoff is now, I don't think as a return guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can pay him. I just don't think they give an opportunity because they're just going to kick the ball out of the end zone if that's the case.
At the same time, you got to have somebody catching the ball as a wide receiver. Like, what if Bateman's not ready?
I think right now,
a free agent.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm like you. I think right now they got two receivers on the team, Bateman and Devin Duvernay.
Yeah,
and then you add from there. But I think you keep Devin Duvernay for at least this final year. I doubt. Oh my goodness, DK, don't say it.
Oh,
he's trolling us right now.
He is.
That's big time. But yeah, I think they find a way to keep him. Finishes out his rookie deal, and then we'll kind of see where it takes him from there. Last guy I want to ask you about here, Jimbo. Do you think there's any chance if Calais Campbell's under contract right now, but if he decides to return, he's going to be a $9.4 million cap hit.
Ugh.
Are the Ravens going, I don't care. If he wants to play, we got it.
Well, and there's got to be a way that they can do something with that, right? Just like turn it into a bonus.
Yeah, just give him an extra year.
Well, how much of it could they just say, here, you can take it up front? You know what I mean? To get it off the salary cap,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they could make some adjustments. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love for Calais to be back. He's he's an older guy, he's long in the tooth, but man, he is still an impact player. And I know that you talked about, we got some young guys up front that have also showed some promise, but if we are on the cusp of what we believe to be true contention for a Super Bowl, you can't just clean house. I mean, you can't just get rid of everyone. So it's funny though. We've said we want them to keep all these guys. What are the chances? Well, except I think Chuck gets traded. I think Chuck's gone. I know that you
I thought Michael Pierce. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So that was your one guy, and then my one was Chuck. So, but yeah, man, I feel like Calais is essential personnel, is the way I'll put it.
Yeah, I think I agree there. As far as like the ranking, I think the most likely person to not be here next year, I would say, is Michael Pierce. Second most likely is Chuck Clark, then Gus Edwards is third.
Wow. See, I think my top three, my only swap would be Chuck. I think Chuck's just gone. He's traded, and he's I think he's going up to play for the football Giants.
The what?
New York Football Giants, dude.
Okay, with Wink. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going up there to play with Marty.
But I think the moral of the story here, Jimbo, is there's not a ton the Ravens can do to create additional cap space. Like
That's the thing.
Slim pickings.
Right. Everyone's excited. Well, I know a lot of people are excited about, make this move, draft this guy, pick up D-Hop, and then we're set at wide receiver along with Bateman. Guys, like, Bateman is going to be our number one next year. And I think that's okay. I'm okay with it,
I think there's an outside shot if they get the Lamar deal, long-term deal done. That's the qualifier. That's the only chance they have of adding a splash player.
Yeah.
And then create space.
Yeah, got to, man. So we'll hope for the best. But really what we want to know from you guys is what are you're the GM, if you're EDC, what is your decision for the players that we talked about? And really quickly, again, one player we didn't talk about was, of course, Marcus Peters, but that's because he's a free agent. So we'll be getting to that shortly. All these players are under contract. So let us know what your thoughts are. You cut him, extend him, trade him, let him play under his current deal. Leave all your comments below, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See, yesterday does not matter. You're looking forward to today.
I'm looking forward to being a Raven.
What are they getting?
Everything out of me. They're going to get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that.